Hello, everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. I am your host, Olivia Akin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We will give you real life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Dante Amaral. Dante is a growth developer. Dante has started multiple businesses in the technology industry, including Rocket Art Labs. Dante also previously worked at Kinetic as an operations manager. You can find Dante on LinkedIn by searching Dante Amaral or emailing him at danteamaral411 at gmail.com. Hello, Dante. It's fantastic having you on the show.
What's up, Olivia? Thank you for having me. I
To
really
start
appreciate you reaching out.
Of course. To start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Dante Amaral? Of
Oh wow. All right. Throwing a big one out there right off the bat, huh?
course.
Um, yeah, I would say like success can be defined in a lot of different ways, and it's obviously person to person. For me, success has a few different categories. Um, there's financial success, physical success, mental success, spiritual success. And balancing all of those things can like become a time really just a full-time thing in itself. So to me, I want to make sure that like at one point in my life I can reach financial freedom to a certain degree, and everyone has a different metric on where they're measuring that by. Like if you depending on the type of country you live in, if you move to a third world country with $100,000, you'll be more than set for the rest of your life. Whereas if you live off $100,000 in San Francisco or New York City, you might be living to your means. Um, So for me, I would like to at least develop a life where I'm not living bill to bill, paycheck to paycheck. Um, so I don't really keep high expenses. I'm a pretty frugal person. I spend most of my money on healthy food actually, and just keeping my body and mind healthy. That's where I spend a lot of money. Um, and other than that, I think there's a lot of joy and happiness that you can create in life without having an immense amount of like wealth or income. With that being said, I want to do my best to try and make a lot of money. So, um, then I guess like from a physical and mental perspective, I think those kind of go hand in hand. Always taking care of yourself is like step one to I think most of my days. I optimize my days around, I guess, the financial success, because I feel like that's the one I wouldn't say lacking the most in, but like I'm pursuing the hardest right now. So like taking care of my physical body and my mental state is incredibly important, but I wouldn't say I train like an athlete or I sit and meditate all day long. I train to keep my body healthy, and I meditate and take time to myself to keep my mind like in a good mental state so that I can optimize for my financial success right now. Um, so to me, like I don't know, I don't have any like fitness goals per se. Like I would love to run like under a 5 minute mile. I would like to be in the 1,000 pound club for lifting weights. I love doing yoga and being flexible, but those aren't like headstrong goals where like if I don't run every single day or lift every day, I'm not like upset with myself. It's like you just kind of keep moving forward because that's not the goal I'm optimizing for right now.
And I think
And then
that's
spiritual. Yeah, sorry.
no,
Go ahead.
I think that's key is figuring out, you can be successful in different areas while figuring out what your goal at the moment is to optimize. Which of those avenues are key right now? And then, yeah, you still want to do your spiritual goals, your mental and physical goals, but they could be more of a, I don't want to say back burner, but a second and third goal that you're working towards at the same time.
Right. Because in my mind too, it's also like if you are fully optimizing for, let's say, financial success, you actually have to take care of your financial and I mean not financial, your mental and physical state. because if you're not, you won't really truly be optimizing for a financial successful world. Like if that's the end goal, you need to make sure your brain's in tip top shape. You need to make sure you have a functioning and capable body. Like if your body is, feeling sluggish all the time, if your mental state is feeling sluggish, then it's going to impede on the goal you're optimizing for. So it's actually, I think, critical to being successful financially is taking care of your mental state and your physical body. There's a saying that I like. It's like a healthy man wants 1,000 things, but a sick man wants one. And at the end of the day, that's, super true. You can have all the money in the world, but if you're not able-bodied, then, what's the money for?
Exactly. Dante, you started your first business while being a college student. What was it like running a company and juggling classes and your personal life, especially as a college student?
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. Like, that's like, I mean, everyone has a different kinda, like, personality take, and for me, like, ever since I was very young, I've kinda been headstrong on, like, starting my own things and, like, building things from the ground up. Um, it's just been something I really have enjoyed. And so when I was in college was when I started my first company, and that was for me like a test to see if I could really do it. Like I was actually like the antithesis to like the regular college student. Like I didn't want to go to college. Um I was the first person in my family to go to college, and that conversation when I was in high school was more so like if I can figure out how to make a successful business before college, I'm not going. And my parents were like, that's fine. That didn't work out, so they won that battle, and I was the first person to graduate from or go to college in my whole extended family, which is really nice to accomplish, but I never lost sight of, like, that goal that I wanted to build something on my own, and, I was going to do that. So, in college, I focused heavily on making sure I was learning, like, not just getting good grades, like, good grades came from learning, but, like, my goal wasn't just to have like straight A's. It was like, how much can I really gain from taking these sorts of classes? And in fact, I think the most growth for me came from non-business school classes. So like I went to business school just so your listeners know and have my MBA, but I would say the classes that helped me in my personal development the most are probably like philosophy, psychology, improv acting. Improv acting was actually great. Like if any of your listeners are in sales, improv acting, you can't like practice any better than that. Um, so it was more so like let's make sure I'm learning and then applying those things that I was learning in school to my own like journey of being an entrepreneur. So starting my first company was actually a clothing company, and that was just because I was very passionate about fashion in high school, and I was like, if I have all this domain knowledge on fashion, why not start something of my own? And so that was it. Wasn't like miserable or anything like that. Like, oh, I don't have any time to do anything because like I enjoy learning. I enjoy building. So it was like instead of like partying or going out all the time, which everyone still should do and have a good time. My fun time was like building stuff on my own and like and seeing what could come from that.
And I think that's key is figuring out what you did, especially as an entrepreneur, is understanding that whether you're an entrepreneur or, like you said, going into sales, that if you're in a business degree program, your non-business classes can be just as pivotal to your growth and success, and vice versa. If you're in communications, taking some of those business classes can be really important and you can learn a lot, and it can grow you in ways that you wouldn't have had the knowledge if you just really focused on those core classes within your curriculum. Dante,
Yeah, to piggyback off that a lot, I think it's actually incredibly vital to actually have like some understanding of what's going on for things that aren't in your own domain, even if it's just for the reason of I want to learn this. So, like while I was in college and after college, I've been a self-taught programmer, and programming for me wasn't like something like, oh, I want to get a job being an engineer. That was never the case. It was just so I can, in fact, like wire my brain to think about problems in a different way. And that's just not just with like programming, but like I love playing like chess. I love playing poker. And these are just different things that I like to do that reframe your mind when you're thinking about real world problems, how to go about them in different ways.
And I think that's key is figuring out things you enjoy, like poker, chess, that can help tune your mind to think about situations in different ways. It doesn't mean you have to just read a book or and that's the solution. Here's 5 ways to look at a situation differently. It can be things you enjoy doing crossword puzzles, you know, um things like that, chess, that make you strategically think, and then you bring that to other areas. So you're having fun while honing those skills to bring to your everyday life, whether it's professionally or personally. Dante, you talked about that balance of doing what you love and taking it not just from inside the classroom, but what you were doing outside the classroom. So you were really involved in student organizations at your university, Quimpiac. Um, and how did you, I don't want to say practice, but in those organizations while still running your business, how did you apply what you were learning in those organizations and practicing in those organizations into your business?
Yeah, I mean, for my business I was running in college, the supply chain organization kind of worked hand in hand because obviously if you're selling clothes and merchandise, like you have to know how supply chains work. It helps a lot. If you don't know, like it'll just make your processes more efficient. And so for me, the organizations were actually something that I think when I was in charge of and leading was just a way for me to go, okay, I'm interested in artificial intelligence. Let's talk about it in this organization now. So it really wasn't like I had to set up like all this time to put aside things that I didn't like doing. It's just like I just incorporated it. So like for example, the company that I started after I graduated college was doing smart contract programming for like brands and artists um, that want to get into like Web3 technology. And that actually stemmed from like me in the student organizations for supply chain, finding that blockchain could be a really efficient way for um, essentially companies can implement blockchain technology into their current supply chains and it would make the tracking process a lot more efficient for at least some companies. And that got me down this blockchain rabbit hole. And so it just started becoming like, okay, I'd go to the student organization, talk about topics that people are interested in, and then go down those rabbit holes and find how they could be applicable to the students' lives themselves. Like, I didn't think it would be proper to run a student organization like another class. It needed to be something that people like to get come to and socialize with one another, but also like learn about things that aren't in the classroom. And I think that's a big problem that academia currently has is that there's no way you can keep up with technology. And in a capitalistic society, you need to find edges wherever you can to, perform the best in the market. And if you're constantly being taught things that are no longer used in the workforce, even from an enterprise level or like industry standard level. But now you're talking about if you want to start your own company, startups, it's like big companies are like big boats. Like sometimes it takes a lot to get them to move, but startups are speedboats. So if you ever want to be in that type of environment, you have to be constantly learning and teaching yourself stuff. And academia is falling behind. And like I think if I was a professor, and I am on the cutting edge of technology, I wouldn't be a professor. You'd be out going and starting your own company. And there's nothing wrong with, being a professor. I think that would be something I'd want to do one day in my career. But it'd be, it's to be a professor, you have to already have standardization. You have to have something that's teachable. And that's always kind of hard when you're on that cutting edge side of things.
So for people, most of our listeners wouldn't know this, Dante. So I met Dante when he was a college student. I was getting my MBA at Quinnipiac, and I started the supply chain organization that Dante is talking about. It's ASCM, it's the International Professional Organization, and universities have student chapters. And I started that, and Dante was one of the founders with me. And I've been laughing while he's talking because, yes, Dante definitely brought to the table. Our goal was to bring things that and discussions and ideas and lessons that weren't being taught in the classroom that we thought was pivotal. And every time we'd have a meeting, and it was right around the time Dante started getting into blockchain and blockchain was like growing, Dante'd be like, okay, let's talk about blockchain. Um, what's going on? How can we incorporate this? And Dante actually led a discussion on blockchain in our organization because he was like, this is going to be so big. Let's spend time learning about it. And that's one of the things you have to do is be able to have a voice and say, this could be important and thinking outside that box of, okay, let's learn about it. And that's something you were discussing earlier was okay, innovation. You There's other things coming in, especially during your education time, that, you know, it- because of curriculums that are already set in whether it's higher education, different parts of the education, I want to say progression, you can't always pivot to what's being innovating during that time. And I think that's in key to being a part of any organization, whether it's a student organization in a college level or once you graduate and you join a professional organization, is understanding there will be concepts and articles coming out and opportunities for discussion on innovative ideas. And you could bring those innovative ideas to the table as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And yeah, it those innovative ideas and those innovative technologies are incredibly crucial to, have a society that's constantly progressing forward. And just because it's not being taught in the classroom doesn't mean it's important. Some like to think about it in a way, it's like if it is like advancing technology, you have to find someone that knows it well enough to teach it. And if they know it well enough to teach it and it's currently being able to make a lot of money, then most likely they're going to be doing that instead of teaching it. So a lot of founders, entrepreneurs, innovators, they read a lot of books, they connect a lot of links of knowledge, and there isn't a right answer a lot of time until after they do it, and then you have a standardized process.
And to you, what is the importance of standardized processes, right? So you were an operations manager. You're really key on having making sure those operations are in place, those procedures and things are done correctly. What do you do to make sure those procedures, protocols, everything is written up in a way that's understandable and done correctly and it's a continuous movement?
Well, it's incredibly important, especially it's funny because I feel like in the startup community, it's like a lot of startup founders are very strategic people. They're very bright people, um, and a lot of the times it's like they can't sit themselves down to do documentation or get a standardized process for things, and that's fine when you are a two-person company, a five-person company. Yeah, not even really, but sure, you can get away with it. um, but the thing is as you start scaling and as you start growing as a company, which ultimately I would assume you'd want to do as a founder. Some founders only want small companies, and that's fine. Everyone has their own distinction of what they want for themselves. But as your company grows and grows and grows, you never want to play catch up on the standardization and documentation part. I'm actually working right now with a buddy right now. I've left Rocket Art. I'm an advisor there now. I'm no longer leading the operations there. And I've started to work on a new idea with one of my close friends that's been working in artificial intelligence for 2 years. And we've been sitting down coding like the past few weeks. And while we're doing this, if I ever get stuck on something, I actually sit down and do documentation on like onboarding, marketing, sales, pricing models, value propositions, whatever I can do documentation on. I've been doing the documentation for because in my head, if we do create a successful product that people end up using, and I do need to bring on people to this team, I don't wanna play catch up on it. I don't wanna do that type of documentation when I have a bunch of clients or, a bunch of customers that are obviously going to be needing 100% attention because if that's where your business revenue stream is coming from, that needs the utmost attention as a founder. So to me, it's insanely critical as you develop as a company to make sure you have those standardizations and documentations in place so that when someone does come on board, it's not well, how do I do this? And it's a open-ended question, and then they make up their own process, and then that doesn't work, and it's an argument, or it's like it's at best case scenario a hold up in your workflow. So incredibly important and definitely a little, I think, undervalued from the startup world community. I don't know if it's overvalued from like the enterprise level because they got documentation for like how to brush your teeth style stuff, but very, very, very important.
Well, I think too, it's very dependent on your role, what you're doing. I've seen many companies not take it as important. Kind of like you said, you're doing a startup, you want it to be successful, you're in the nitty gritty every day, trying to make it to that point. You make it to that point, and then it's no longer the increase of trying to launch a brand and get it to be successful. It's that growth that, okay, now we're becoming successful and now I have to focus on these things because we're going to be there and get that maturity level in the company. And then all those procedures, your HR procedures, the procedures to do your role, everything gets put on the back burner because now I have to take care of we got it to this point. It needs to succeed at this point, and I want the growth to continue. And what ends up happening is people look down 20 years later and they've all these people and customer service is on a decline to some extent. There's errors. And you look at things like the Green Belt Six Sigma certification, which Dante and I both have, and it talks a lot about finding those errors and what the ratio in error is about. Like, can you have 2% error every month? Can you have 3? What is the comfort and how to make sure to catch those errors? And when you don't have those protocols in place, what ends up happening is 10 years down the line, whatever it might be, you're like, why are we losing money where that money we could have been getting this whole time? And it's those little things. And someone didn't realize to click a certain button because it's not in an instruction manual. Someone was onboarded and didn't know to do a certain thing, and it's catching those errors as they're happening instead of down the line that can really save a business and be the difference between being in the red and being in the green.
Absolutely. And even like what you were mentioning, like it can even become scarier when it's a qualitative aspect rather than a quantitative aspect. If you're doing proper management, operations management of like what's going on within your company, you should be able to point out quantitative inefficiencies pretty quickly. Um, when it's a qualitative inefficiency, that's a really big problem. And I think a lot of times, like Steve Jobs would say, like if you hire 18 players and you make sure that they know they're going to hire other 18 players, then you don't settle for B work. But if your 18 players maybe aren't set with the right standardizations and processes for how to look when hiring or whatever your rules may be, or whatever the ways you do your processes, then you bring on B team people, and B team people bring on C team people, and to a founder, that's like incredibly scary because if you're devoting your life and all your resources to creating a successful company, the last thing you want is to eventually be so far down the line and realize that you have things that are just wasting you money and you don't even know where they're coming from because they're not from a quantitative standpoint, but a qualitative standpoint.
Let's talk about that qualitative standpoint a little bit more. What is the importance of your employees, people you work with, being happy in their role and making sure they're happy to be successful for not them that just them no, if I can tell themselves, but for the company as well. How do you make sure you've set that good environment up?
Yeah, that's really critical and really important, and I think it's actually gotten a little, like, I don't know how to what the type of word would be for it, but it's definitely changed, with a lot of companies being fully remote. Um, for me, it's like the way I can take a look into seeing where a person wants to be and what they want from themselves and what they are interested in, and making sure that kind of aligns similarly with the company. Like I don't like you always want to look closely enough to 100% fit, um, as possible, but at the same time you want to make sure you're also not just producing the same ideas. Like I want people to challenge me. I want people to think critically and think about things differently than I do. Um, Mark Andreessen like says, strong opinions loosely held. So, like, I love when people have, like, an opinion that's different than mine and can sit there and have a discussion and with facts, or even just a thought process that, takes 3, 4 steps in to why they're thinking they're the way they are, but still being open enough to, like, learn from one another. What you really don't wanna see is people that are so impressionable that they don't have opinions on anything, and people that are incredibly stubborn that won't learn from another person. You want to be in that middle ground where you definitely want to be stubborn about your opinion and have reasons to be, but also be willing to have the conversation with an open mind and being like, well, maybe I didn't view it that way. Um, which I mean, I don't that completely, I guess, derailed your question because your question was about keeping your employees happy. So I guess to me, it's making sure that our beliefs kind of align into a certain degree, and making sure that they're passionate about the industry itself and passionate about what we're working on. Um, Especially in startups, like it really shouldn't be about how like much money you're making. It should be more so about the pursuit of like working on something from the ground up, because if you're successful in that pursuit, you make a lot of money. Um, but you won't if your goal is a lot of money, then you won't make it. Like that's not like a real goal to have. So it's like, especially in startups or wherever it is that you're working, if it's startups, you need to be passionate about the thing that you're working on, because there's going to be many other people that are competing with you. So it's like you're in the Olympics, for businesses. And if you're in an enterprise company, an industry standard company, it's like you should just be working where you like to work and with happy like and being with happy people, and making sure that you're spending 40 hours of your life not dreading going to work. Like I think that's like more like spiritual suicide. If you do something every day that you really really hate, like that's definitely not good. I recommend anybody that's in that situation, no matter how much money they're making, to exit it. um so to me, it's and obviously there's ways to make sure that people are happy, like obviously transparency and honesty, and starting from like a point of like getting to know each other well first, and making sure that they're doing what they like to be doing. I think sometimes people can find themselves in a spot where like they will like almost convince themselves something that they don't really want for themselves. And that can be like tough because sometimes they don't even realize that they don't want it. And that's more of an internal thing that they have to deal with. But I think as long as you're working on things that you're passionate about and you're doing it with people that, you're happy with being around, then you should be good.
So you said a few very key points here. Make sure you have your passion. If make sure your employees have the passion, especially in startups, because look at Facebook, right? When they hired everyone on, they said, "We don't have the money. We'll give you the equity in the company." And then
Exactly.
now, look where Facebook is. Well, I should say
Yeah,
Meta, but look where it is now. And they treated their employees right in the beginning, saying, "Listen, here's the transparency, here's where we're at, but we're investing long term in you as well. So here is what it is." And a lot of startups do that. And so it's understanding, if you have the passion, you have the drive, where can that lead you, not just within the company and that growth, but down the line as well. I think
absolutely. Especially when you're in a startup too, it's like you're in that environment where everyone should be learning as much as possible. So you want to do everything in your capabilities to make sure that any of your employees and yourself included are always given the resources needed to like learn about new topics, and whether that may be like going to like events for technology, or like signing up for programs that make you a better product manager or marketing manager or whatever that may be. Just always investing in your employees and in yourself is always something that will pay dividends at the end of the day. And companies that are startups that do offer equity, if you believe in that vision, you believe in that team, you believe in that industry, then, you know, worst case scenario, you walk out with a lot more experience and a lot more knowledge, which I don't think is really a bad thing. Best case scenario, you don't have to ever work again if you don't want to.
Yeah. So, that being said, you also brought up the point earlier of making sure you're firm in when you know to be firm in where you stand, the idea you have, but also knowing when it's okay to kind of take a step back, listen, and say, okay, maybe you're on to something. Let's hear it out. And like, let's spend 30 minutes talking it through. And we've definitely had those discussions in the past where we'll be on a topic and you're like, okay, I think it's this way. And I'm like, okay, well, have you thought about this way? And we'll start going back and forth. And next thing you know, Dante and I are in a conversation for an hour going, okay, well, what could that look like? So,
Yeah.
it's,
Which is beautiful, because it's like it's respectful disagreement to get to our both common goal. Our common goal is you could say, when we were working together, was making sure the organization could be as healthy and as flourishing as possible. Now, if you have a different opinion than I do, we at least know we have the same goal. So it's like, if you're making a point and I'm making a point and they don't align, it's great to learn from each other, because you might see something I don't see and I might see something that you don't see. I don't know if I phrased that correctly, but you get the point. And it's like, it's about like, realizing, okay, we're in this together. We might see things differently. So like, let's talk it out and like, defend your point. Like, if you think you're right. But also at the same time, always listen to others. Like, that's incredibly important. Like, it's funny. One of my friends actually the other day said, Dante listens to everybody, but just because he listens to you doesn't mean he'll do it. And it's one of those things where it's like, I always love others' inputs, but at the same time, sometimes you just got to make, if it's an individualist decision, at least it's like not related to a company. It's like, yeah, thank you so much for the input. I'm still gonna do it my way though. When it's a company, it's a little different, but
let's talk about that for a second because, like we were just kind of joking about, Dante is all in for anyone to have a challenging discussion. He handles it with grace. How do you, especially in your personal life, when someone might be bringing a different perspective or, saying that's wrong, you have to do it this way. How do you kind of listen to it without getting heated, even in your personal life, and say, okay, I understand you, I hear you, but I'm still going to do this in my personal life? How do you balance that?
um, so when it's for me, I mean, I think I'm always very happy to hear that people are taking into consideration what I'm doing with my life and have recommendations for me. At the end of the day, though, you have to think of opinions kind of as a color palette. And like, if you mix all the colors together, they look like crap. So you don't want to do that. Everyone has an opinion, and some opinions might be a little bit better than other opinions. And you have to have that internal compass to kind of decide what's best for you in your life. It's like, it's one of those things where I think, especially when it comes from your friends and family, they will have opinions for everything that you're doing. And it always comes from good intentions. But just because it comes from good intentions doesn't always mean it's right. And so like, one of the things I've talked about with my family is like, they're not enthusiastic that I have this like entrepreneurial spirit and like I'm always out trying new things. Like, they want me to have like, you know, nice steady 9 to 5, like something, because like that in their head, being immigrants was like the dream. Like, you got a nice 9 to 5, like blah blah blah. So they're like, I don't know why you're taking these risks. Like, you're so smart, you're this, and I'm like, that's well, I just want to do it this way. Um, And it's one of those things where it's like, if I know that they're like impeding, I don't know if that's the right word, their opinion on me. I hope that's the right word, or imposing, I think is the better word to use there. It's from a place of love, and, like, it's not really anything to get aggravated about. Like, they wanna see what's best for me, my friends wanna see what's best for me, my family wants to see what's best for me, and that comes from, like, obviously, having enough respect for myself to also surround myself with other good people that care about you and you care about them. So, not getting heated, I think, comes from just knowing that if you're a good person, like, the recommendations that might be coming to you are from people that think that they know what's best for you. But at the end of the day, you kind of usually will know what's best for you. And, if you're wrong, then you get to blame yourself anyway. So you can't blame anybody else if you're wrong. And if you're right, and everybody's happy. Um, when it comes to other people, though, I try not to give my input on what other people should be doing with their life unless they're asking. If someone asks, I am an open book. I will say things very honestly. I will say things that could possibly hurt somebody's feelings, and not from a way of like hurting your feelings to hurt your feelings. Hurting your feelings because sometimes people need to hear things that they don't like to hear, and other people won't say it to them. I am very honest when people ask me for feedback. But with that being said, if you live your life a certain way and I don't particularly agree with the way you live your life, who am I to say that you shouldn't be living your life this way? Unless you're asking me. If you're asking me, then I will definitely give my opinion. So I think it's just more so about like that mutual respect of like, if people are giving me recommendations, sometimes I think, oh, wow, I didn't think of it this way. This was fantastic. I'm going to look more into this. I might be implementing this. Most of the time, so thank you so much for your recommendation. I appreciate it. And I don't really follow through on, whatever their recommendation was, because I feel like I have a very strong internal compass on where I wanna take my life. And for others, I wish everyone the best. I always wear a smile no matter where I'm at, and, yeah, I don't really give my 2 cents too many times unless someone's asking for it explicitly.
And I think that's key is, having the mutual respect, like you said, very key point right there. Don't give your opinion sometimes unless it's asked, because
Yeah,
I think that's key is knowing when the right time and someone wants the perspective, and knowing when it's, "Okay, I just have my ideas on how this should really be getting taken care of, whether it's personally or professionally." But that person might not want it. They might be
yeah,
happy with what they're doing. And I think a key point you also brought up is just because they're doing something and happy with the way they're doing it and they're not gonna change, that does not mean you have to stay there. You don't have to be in that
right.
space with them. You could say, "You know what? That's your decision. I'm happy for you. That's the progression you wanna go. But at this time, I'm gonna go this way instead. I'm
Yeah.
gonna go down this separate path," and having that mutual respect at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that comes from knowing your self-worth as well, and I think that kind of, what you just mentioned will happen frequently in, like, relationships, whether it's friendships or, more intimate relationships where, like, there's nothing wrong with, I think, you getting to know somebody well, and then, as time progresses, people obviously always change. Change is a constant in life that will never stop, and, being able to know yourself well enough and respect yourself well enough that if some things are starting to happen that you really don't like, instead of changing the person, you're always welcome to go. You're gonna have a real tough battle. You're gonna have a hill to die on if you want to change somebody else. Like it doesn't work out, and so you might as well just know yourself well enough to know when it's time to exit a situation.
Well, we're giving relationship advice at this point to our listeners, which I love because I think emotional intelligence is key to anyone's life, whether it's personally or professionally. Being able to read a room, being able to read a situation, your body language, it's really key for you finding your footstep in any relationship and knowing when things are hitting that line. I want to touch upon the fact that you brought up that it's okay to know when to say, "I'm leaving," because at the same point, those friendships, those relationships, Tyler Perry, I love Tyler Perry. He says it great. Some people are here for a season. They're not meant to be a lifetime. It's like looking at a tree. He says it amazingly, and everyone should go Google the quote. But
I love that quote. I know exactly which one you're talking about.
yes, it's amazing, and I sometimes when I'm struggling with relationships, whether it's professionally, personally, and not knowing when to kind of say, "Okay, you know what? This isn't going the way. It's time to leave." I always play that back of, "You know what? They were here. We were meant to have these moments, these memories, these, learning and growth and challenging each other in this time, but that does not mean I have to stay forever in that friendship, in that work environment, whatever it might be." Dante, how do you handle, you know, we you've talked throughout today being the first student to go to college in your family, coming from immigrant parents and having that ideal from them of this is what career path should look like. How do you handle being from immigrant parents and having that ideal, but wanting to challenge that and come more from a startup perspective?
Um, I don't have an option. My soul says so. Um, I don't know what it is, but ever since I've been a little kid, I've loved the idea of building stuff on my own and running my own business and like not even from like the egotistical standpoint of like I need to be people's bosses. I'm actually like very laissez-faire. I don't really care to be telling people what to do. Like if I were to ever be incredibly successful and run a company with many, many, many people, I really would not be happy if I had to be telling people what to do all the time. Like I think, if I'm doing a good job at what I'm doing, people should kind of know the role that they're in and what they should be performing and doing. Um, it's more so like I just have this incredible like not yeah, drive is a word, but like this burning passion that like I love to just make stuff happen and I love to make stuff happen that I haven't seen done before. Um and like obviously like never done before is like I don't know, like a weird statement because like obviously people have made clothing lines before that wasn't new. Like people have written smart contracts before me, that's not new. It's more so this like I want to test myself in a field that I don't have this degree or educational background. Like I didn't have a computer science degree, but does that stop me from coding? No. It's more so I find this thing where I go, oh wow, this could really be cool for society and push that forward and say I want to be a part of it. Now, how do I want to be a part of it? Like if I can find a small team to work with, I'm more than happy to jump on a team in the founding level, kind of like when I was working for Kinetic, that was still a small tech company in New York. When I was working for 3D Apartment, that was still a small tech company in Boston. Um, it's more so one of those things where I just want to be working on stuff that I find kind of cutting edge, whether I'm the founder or not the founder. I'm not too particular about, but I really don't care for the legacy companies of playing politics and kind of going through the hierarchical ladder. I'm much more of a person to believe if you're 19 years old and this brilliant genius of a product person and can see design in certain ways, I think you should be in the role better than someone that's been doing it for 20 years. Like I don't think like like the merit that comes with a lot of these jobs are too like too
Age-based?
applicable. Yeah, like age-based, but it's also like one of those things where it's like I don't really care like your merits or your age or whatever it may be. I just kind of want to see you create something great. So I mean, don't get me wrong, it's definitely be harder for a 19-year-old to do the job that someone's been doing for 20 years better than that person. But like I don't really care for like the classification of having all these certifications or whatever that may be to say you're qualified to do something or not to do something. Because I mean, some of the most incredible things that we've ever built in society never know how to. No one had a certification to do it or was told that they were allowed to do it. Like, they it's usually just a smart person that's really determined on like I want to create this or I want to create that, and then they just go and do it. And like obviously you have like the giant tech companies that are like easy to look at now, like Amazon, Meta, Apple. but, like, also, like, more simple companies, like, not simple, but, like, I think Duolingo was, like, this guy from, another country that, like, I don't even his background was, like, nothing, like, that was, like, incredible, and, like, he created an app that's helping people learn to speak other languages. I hope that's accurate. I hope it is the Duolingo person that I'm thinking of, otherwise that'd be really funny, like, you watch him be from, like, Harvard, and he's, like, has all these degrees and certifications. Um, but I've always just found it to be, like, if you're a passionate person, um, and, you wanna test yourself, like, go and join the startup community, like, there's a lot of really awesome people that are really, really passionate about what they do. At the same time, it's not always for everyone either, like, I don't think, like, if I was, like, a dad right now with, like, 3 kids and, like, a mortgage, like, all these bills and all these responsibilities besides myself, would I really be taking on this role as, like, an entrepreneur? Because it is tough, like, there is certain weeks where you go by and you're really stressing yourself out, like, there's been weeks where, like, I've done 80 hours and didn't make any money, and I'm just like, "Geez, like, this was really brutal." Um, but, there's the other weeks where you're like, "Oh, you can make someone's salary." And it's one of those things where everyone, like, going back to my original statement, everyone has to know the life situation that they're in and, work with that and know who they are. So, like, I know I'm taking this risk right now because that's something I wanna do, but just because I wanna do it now doesn't mean I wanna do it in 10 years from now. So I don't know if that answered your question
No,
fully.
it did. I want to touch upon one other thing that you kind of talked about in that answer. Is
Mm,
what would you recommend to someone who's looking to possibly say, you know what, I'm going to do a startup. I have this
mm.
idea. I want to push it to a startup. What does it take to say, okay, yeah, I'm going to start this company. I'm going to, I have this innovative idea. I think I want to take the time, do it. Being someone who's started up a few companies now, what do you think it takes to get to that level and the day in, day out mindset and just overall being that it takes to do a startup?
Yeah, I think one of them comes from the same thing that it takes to, like, if go put on running shoes and tie your laces. Like, it's, like, no different. It's, like, half the battle of, like, going to working out is getting in the car and going to the gym. The other half is when you're there, and there's no real way to kind of push somebody into that first step, because that's really, like, the big leap of faith. It's like, do you believe in yourself so much so that, like, you can stop doing what you're doing currently and just pursue something when everyone is gonna tell you otherwise? Because like, a lot of people, if you're smart enough to also be a founder, you're also smart enough to get a very good job, and if that's the case, you're taking a risk. Your opportunity risk is always being weighed at all times for every decision that you make in life. Um, so I think it really just takes someone that wants to start something and see them build something on their own. I also think it's kind of a little bit more so in tune with our human nature, if you look at it from that point and also start kind of questioning what money is. So it's like, I think you have to start with the question of like how much money you need to live, what do you need this money for, and like money as a like just like in whole, like what is money? It's just like things that you something that you use from society that's like, here, thanks for doing this work that we appreciate. Here, you could trade this in for something else at a certain point in time. Like, that's kind of what money is, so it's like, if you store it for over long periods of time, it doesn't even turn out to be too good. So, it kinda becomes like, well, how much money do you really need to kinda be happy with yourself? And if it's low, then you're in a good position to kinda take the leap to being a startup. If it's high, you're definitely gonna have a harder time doing that because there might be months where you go by where you're working on an idea and you don't have, like, a paycheck for that. Um And I think it also like lastly what I was saying about human nature is like the industrial revolution is kind of what set us in place for like big companies having like hundreds of employees, 500 employees, 1,000 employees working in factories. but that's really, like, just not how things ever work throughout human evolution. And I think tying things back to kind of like how we're naturally programmed as humans can be incredibly helpful to figure out what you want to do for yourself as well. Because if you're out of tune with your programming, like I think of a human as an organic computer. Like I like to treat myself as a program, and like if I have a bug or an error going on in myself, like there's just an organic solution to that error. Um, and as hunters and gatherers, it's like we're seeing new problems every day that we're dealing with and having to figure out with solutions. Whether that's not like, okay, we can't hunt this animal anymore because it's not there, or like we have to build this new tool, or whatever it may be. There's no instructions to how to do that, and that was really like obviously we weren't hunters and gatherers until the industrial revolution, but you didn't really have these processes of big companies with like employees that did you know this hierarchical work for this overarching organization until then. And so if you look back, I think if you're someone that wants to take that leap, you should know that you're naturally inclined as a human to do it anyways.
Dante, how can people get in touch with you in order to connect with you?
Don't get in touch with me. My email is good, and my LinkedIn, like you said earlier. Anything from like a professional standpoint, I'm like very happy to answer like emails at Dante Amaral 411 at gmail.com. 411, that's my birthday. Not that I have answers to everything. I thought that was funny. I didn't even know I did that until someone said that to me. It's like, "Oh, 411, you have all the answers?" And I was like, "No, my birthday's April 11th." Or LinkedIn at Dante Amaral. Yeah, anything professional wise, I'm definitely more than happy to talk about. Also super happy to talk about anything like, health related. I'm a big health geek.
You
Um,
are.
I don't
You're
have any
really good.
certifications, but I definitely have listened to and talked to a lot of people that do have the certifications, and it's definitely helped me in my professional life like a real lot. So yeah, I'm more than happy to chat with anybody. Currently, right now, I'm working on natural language processing. I don't want to give away too many details, but we're building a model for we're building a natural language processing company right now, and we're in the early stages. We're only 4 weeks in, but we've had some pretty big code breakthroughs that I'm
To
pretty
share
excited
with us.
about. I'm pretty excited about. So yeah, like we're looking to start bringing on clients pretty soon, and so hopefully you'll see that in my LinkedIn bio soon. I think you will.
Well,
A few more weeks.
I have full faith we will very shortly because you're very intelligent and you move quickly. You and your partners always do. So you hit the ground running, you're dedicated to something. Next thing you know, it's popped up and it's successful. Thank you, Dante, for all of your insight today. A few of our key takeaways from the conversation are startups are like speedboats. You gotta get moving fast. Set the processes up early. Like Dante said, it's about when you have that moment you need a break in the early, you know, gathering data, doing all that. Take the time to set up those processes. You don't need to sit down and do it in one day. You could do it over time, but make sure they're done and done correctly. Think of opinions as color palettes. I love that one. Yes, sometimes they're good. Yes, sometimes they're bad, but when you mix them all together, it doesn't create anything pretty. Evaluate the amount of money to make you happy. And I think that's really key today is understand what you need to be happy and not what society wants you to be happy or what is out there on social media. What makes you happy and then base whether it's a business startup or what your own financial boundaries and budgets are based off that. This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, Dante Amoro. Thank you for listening and have a successful day. Awesome. Thank you, Dante. See, we got so sidetracked. We were so talking, I didn't hit half the stuff.